She called the Mafia boss baby by mistake and the whole hallway stopped breathing. Not because it was funny, because men like Dante Westbrook didn't get called cute names by strangers. They got feared, obeyed, and avoided. But Avery Monroe didn't know who he was. She was just an exhausted event producer in downtown Chicago running on black coffee panic and a clipboard full of rich people's problems. One second, she was chasing missing champagne through a luxury hotel. The next, she was on her knees staring up at the most dangerous man in the city. And instead of punishing her, he smiled. If you watch until the end, you'll see how one careless word turns into a dangerous obsession, a deadly gala and a love story built in the shadows. Like this video comment where you're watching from and don't blink. Before the hallway stopped breathing, before Dante Westbrook bent down in front of Avery Monroe with that slow, dangerous smile she had already survived 3 disasters, 2 wealthy tantrums and 1 missing crate of champagne. That was the thing nobody understood about luxury events. From the outside, they looked soft. Candlelight, white roses, crystal glasses, polished silver women in silk gowns laughing behind careful hands. But behind the velvet curtains, it was war with better lighting. Avery knew that better than anyone. The Sterling Hope Foundation Gala had taken over the Blackstone Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago like royalty claiming a palace. Every chandelier burned gold. Every mirror had been polished until it reflected a prettier version of the world. The ballroom smelled of gardenias, fresh wax, expensive perfume, and the faint panic of underpaid staff trying not to ruin a night worth more than most houses. Avery moved through it all with a clipboard pressed to her chest and an earpiece tucked beneath her dark hair. Her black blazer was tailored, but the sleeves were pushed up. Her heels were elegant, but one strap had already cut into the back of her ankle. Her lipstick was still perfect because she had not had time to drink water since noon. She checked her watch. 8:10. The doors opened in 10 minutes. 10 minutes in event time was either a lifetime or a funeral procession depending on how many things were currently on fire. Tonight, the answer was too many. Avery. Marvin Ellis appeared beside a marble column with the face of a man who had just seen his own death and found it itemized on an invoice. His silver hair was combed neatly, but sweat had gathered at his temples. He owned Ellis and Vale events, at least on paper. In practice, Avery kept the company alive, while Marvin smiled in client meetings and promised miracles he had no idea how to deliver. She did not slow down. "Walk with me, Marvin." He hurried beside her short legs, working twice as hard to match her pace. "Senator Briggs is refusing table 11. "Of course he is. He says the lighting makes him look tired. He is tired. He is 74 and drinks bourbon like it is a vegetable." "Avery, I'll move a floor lamp and tell him it is a private lighting adjustment from the hotel." Marvin blinked. "Can we do that?" "We can do anything if we say it calmly." They passed a row of waiters lined against the wall like soldiers waiting inspection. Avery stopped so suddenly that Marvin nearly walked into her. She pointed at one tray. "Those are crab cakes." The young waiter holding the tray looked down as if the food might defend itself. "Yes, ma'am. Those go nowhere near table 4. Judge Bell has a shellfish allergy and his wife already hates us because the valet called her car beige." The waiter paled. "It is beige. Truth is not always useful. Take them to table 16. He turned and hurried away. Marvin let out a shaky breath. "I do not know how you notice these things." Avery was already moving again. "Because noticing things is cheaper than lawsuits." Her earpiece crackled. Tessa Avery said, touching one finger to it, "Tell me something beautiful." Tessa Grant's voice came through strained and bright the way it always sounded when Disaster had put on nice shoes and walked into the room. The harpist just threw up in the green room. Avery closed her eyes for half a second. That was not beautiful. "I am choosing honesty tonight. Why did she throw up?" She said nerves. I say shrimp. Was it our shrimp? A beat of silence. Tessa, I am checking. Avery turned sharply toward the service corridor. Put the second violinist near the fountain and tell the quartet to start early. No one notices missing harp if strings are aggressively emotional. I love when you speak fluent rich people. Baby, I invented the language. Marvin gave her a worried look as she kept walking. Is Tessa handling the champagne? She is handling the harpist, the champagne, and probably the meaning of life by now. That girl needs a raise. That girl needs health insurance that does not make her cry in public. Marvin looked away. Avery noticed that too, but she let it sit between them. Ellison Vale was not dying loudly. It was dying politely. A few late payments, a few clients lost to bigger agencies, a few vendors asking for deposits up front. Marvin still wore nice suits and talked about growth, but Avery had seen the accounting folder on his desk. She had seen the red numbers, the delayed invoices, the bank notices folded under old wedding brochures. She also knew her own paycheck had cleared 2 days late last month. Still, she showed up, because her mother's hospital had called twice this week, because her younger brother Miles had tuition due, because people said, follow your dreams, when they had never had to choose between rent and medicine. Avery's dream had become simple: keep things from collapsing. Tonight, that meant keeping 500 wealthy guests happy enough to donate money and drunk enough not to notice the lies they told each other. She entered the ballroom through the side entrance and paused just long enough to scan the room. The stage lights were correct. Warm, but not yellow. The floral arrangements were tall enough to impress, short enough not to block conversation. The silent auction tables glittered with framed vacations, designer jewelry, signed sports memorabilia, and one ugly modern sculpture Marvin kept calling brave because the artist was standing nearby. At table 9, a woman in emerald satin was glaring at a man who was not her husband. At table 12, a hedge fund manager was trying to move his place card closer to a television actress. At the bar, a tech founder in white sneakers was explaining cryptocurrency to a bartender who looked like he wanted to resign from civilization. Normal problems. Manageable problems. Avery tapped her earpiece again. Tessa status on table 12. Currently annoying, not yet dangerous. Keep an eye on the hedge fund guy. If he touches a place card, break his spirit. With pleasure. Avery crossed the ballroom smiling at guests, as if her feet were not screaming. Every person she passed needed something. Directions, reassurance, recognition, a compliment, a lie. You look stunning, Mrs. Weller. Yes, the mayor is expected soon. No, the sculpture is not supposed to represent anything literal. Of course, your table is one of our favorites. She said all of it with warmth. She said all of it while calculating distance timing staff placement, and which guests had already had too much champagne. Near the dessert station, a young server stood frozen with a tray of chocolate mousse cups. His eyes were wide. His hands trembled. Avery stepped beside him. First gala. He nodded. What is your name, Ethan? Ethan. See that woman in the silver dress? He looked. She is going to take 2 desserts and pretend one is for her husband. Let her. See the man near the palm tree. Yes, he is going to ask if the mousse is sugar-free. It is not. Tell him it is low sweetness, not sugar-free. Rich people accept vague phrases better than bad news. Ethan breathed out, almost smiling. Yes, ma'am, and stop holding the tray like it is evidence. He adjusted his grip. Avery patted his shoulder once and moved on. That was the rhythm of her life. Fix the flower. Calm the donor. Hide the crack. Smile through the smoke. Her phone buzzed in her blazer pocket. She pulled it out, still walking, and saw the hospital billing number. For 1 second, the ballroom blurred. The music softened. The gold light became too bright. She pictured her mother in a narrow bed near a window that looked over a parking lot. Her mother would smile when Avery visited, even when her skin looked gray, even when the machines made soft little sounds that followed Avery into her dreams. She would ask about work. She would say, "You always did know how to make a room beautiful." Avery stared at the missed call. Then she turned the phone face down in her palm, slipped it back into her pocket, and lifted her chin. Not now. Panic could wait in line like everyone else. Marvin appeared again, this time more breathless than before. "The mayor's team is at the south entrance. They are saying the route is unsecured. It is secured. They say it is not. They mean it does not make them feel important enough. Avery, please." I moved 2 guards, cleared the service path, and blocked the press from the coat room. If they want more security, tell them to bring less ego. Marvin opened his mouth. Avery looked at him. He closed it. "Right," he said. "I will tell them the route has been personally reviewed." "Good phrase. Use that." He hurried off. Avery allowed herself 1 sip of lukewarm coffee from a cup she had abandoned behind a centerpiece 40 minutes ago. It tasted like burned dirt and salvation. Her earpiece crackled again. "Avery," Tessa said, and this time her voice was lower. Avery straightened. "What hotel management is clearing the East VIP corridor?" For who I asked. They looked at me like I had requested nuclear codes. Avery glanced toward the tall double doors leading out of the ballroom. The hotel manager, a narrow man named Mr. Lowell, was speaking urgently to 2 security guards. Both guards looked uncomfortable. One of them adjusted his tie twice in 5 seconds. Avery walked toward him. "Mr. Lowell," he turned too quickly. "Miss Monroe, why are my access routes being rearranged 6 minutes before doors open?" His smile was paper thin. "A private guest is arriving. This entire event is private. This guest requires discretion. Everyone in this building requires discretion. Half of them are here with someone they are not married to." Mr. Lowell's eyes flicked toward the corridor. Avery followed the look. Staff were disappearing from the hallway, not stepping aside. Disappearing. Like someone had opened a drain and pulled the noise out with the people. Her annoyance cooled into something sharper. "Who is coming?" Mr. Lowell lowered his voice. "Dante Westbrook." The name landed differently from other names, not because Avery knew him personally. She did not. But Chicago had certain names that moved through rooms before the people arrived. Names that made conversations shorten. Names that made men with power suddenly remember appointments elsewhere. Dante Westbrook was one of those names. Officially, he was a shipping executive. Westbrook Logistics owned warehouses, trucking routes, lake freight contracts, and enough lakefront real estate to make politicians speak of him with careful admiration. Unofficially, everyone had a story. A union leader who challenged him and retired overnight. A rival who vanished after a dock fire. A federal investigation that went nowhere because witnesses forgot what they had seen. A judge who once called him a businessman in public and a wolf in private. Avery did not traffic in rumors. Rumors did not help with seating charts. Still, her fingers tightened around the clipboard. "Why is he on my guest list?" Mr. Lowell blinked. "He donated $2 million to the foundation. People who donate $2 million usually enjoy being announced." "He does not. That sounds inconvenient for me. It would be best," Mr. Lowell said carefully, "if the east corridor remained clear." Avery looked at the corridor again. A young server stepped too close to the entrance, saw something beyond the door, and immediately backed away. Avery did not like fear in workspaces. Fear made people sloppy. She leaned closer to Mr. Lowell. "Listen to me. I do not care if the Pope, the President, or the ghost of Al Capone is walking through that hallway. My staff need access to the service elevators, the kitchen, and the ballroom. Nobody blocks my event without speaking to me." Mr. Lowell swallowed. Behind her, someone gave a quiet, nervous laugh. Avery turned. Tessa had arrived with a headset around her neck, a stain on her sleeve, and the expression of a woman who had just wrestled fate in a service elevator and won by biting. "You may want to care a little," Tessa said. Avery lowered her voice. How bad? Tessa glanced toward the corridor. 3 black cars outside. Hotel security looks like they want to call their mothers. One guy in a dark suit asked me if the loading dock had roof access. Why, I did not ask follow-up questions because I enjoy having a pulse. Avery rubbed the bridge of her nose. Champagne found. Harpist recovering spiritually. Vegan entrees alive and unseasoned. Avery exhaled. Good. Then we ignore the scary rich man and finish our job. Tessa studied her. You sure? Avery looked around the ballroom at the candles, the flowers, the nervous staff, the donors waiting to be impressed, the hidden cracks under all that shine. No, she said, but I am employed. Tessa smiled faintly. That is the saddest battle cry I have ever heard. It is also honest. Avery sent her back toward the kitchen, then moved to the entrance table. The guest list lay there in a leather folder, guarded by 2 hostesses in black dresses. Avery flipped through the pages until she found the late additions. Dante Westbrook. No guest, no meal preference, no special notes, of course. Men like that never wrote preferences down. Other people learned them and feared getting them wrong. Avery closed the folder. Across the ballroom, Senator Briggs was gesturing angrily at a lamp. She went to him. "Senator," she said, warmth sliding over her face like silk. "I had that light adjusted for you." He paused mid-complaint. "You did?" "Of course. The original angle did nothing for your profile." His shoulders softened. "I thought so." His wife gave Avery a knowing look over the rim of her glass as if she understood exactly what had just happened and approved of it. Avery smiled and moved on. That was her magic. Not real magic. Real magic would have paid medical bills and fixed broken companies. Avery's magic was smaller, harder, and more useful. She could enter a room full of powerful people and know what each one needed before they made it everyone else's problem. Respect. Control. Flattery. Distance. A fresh drink. A better lie. By 8:14, the gala was almost ready. Almost was a dangerous word. Her earpiece sparked with static. "Tessa, I am in the West Service area. The champagne is moving. Repeat, the champagne has left the elevator." Never thought that sentence would give me hope. Do not get emotional. One crate is missing 2 bottles. Avery stopped near the side hallway. "Tell me you are joking. I wish I loved joy enough to joke." "Find them. I am trying." "Tessa, baby. If Table 1 does not have champagne in 4 minutes, Marvin is going to sweat through his soul." On it. Avery checked her watch. 4 minutes. She could make that work. She could always make that work. She tucked the guest list under her arm and headed toward the VIP corridor for one final sweep. She wanted eyes on the path before the major donors entered. She wanted to make sure no server had abandoned a tray, no floral wire was showing, no security guard was standing where a photographer could catch him looking bored and heavily armed. The hallway outside the ballroom was quieter now, too quiet. The kind of quiet that did not belong in a hotel hosting 500 guests. Avery moved faster. Her heels struck the polished floor in quick, clean beats. Her earpiece wire brushed her cheek. A loose curl fell near her eye, and she blew it away without slowing down. From somewhere ahead came the low murmur of men's voices. Not guests, not staff. The voices were controlled. Heavy, like each word had been weighed before it was allowed into the air. Avery barely noticed. Her mind was already 3 problems ahead. Champagne. Table 1. Mayor entrance. Senator Lamp. She turned the corner, hard one hand lifting to her earpiece. "Tessa, I swear, if those bottles are in another elevator, I am filing a missing persons report. Static answered. Then Tessa's voice. I found one. One is not plural. I am working on the concept. Avery looked down at her clipboard as she rounded the last bend of the corridor. That was why she did not see him. Not at first. She only felt impact, solid, warm, immovable. The kind of collision that made her breath leave her body and her papers explode into the air. Her clipboard hit the floor. Seating charts slid across the marble. Donor cards scattered beneath polished shoes. One page drifted slowly down like a white flag surrendering on her behalf. Avery stumbled, caught herself, and dropped to her knees with a sharp, frustrated breath. Oh, for the love of God! The person she had hit did not apologize, did not move, did not even shift back to give her space. That was all it took for the last thread of her patience to snap. She grabbed a seating chart from under one expensive black shoe and spoke without looking up. Watch where you're standing, baby. I've got 5 minutes before the doors open and you're stepping on the governor's shellfish allergy. The hallway died. Not quieted. Died. Avery's fingers froze around the paper. Somewhere behind her, a server made a small sound and then stopped. The air changed. It thickened, pressed down. Avery slowly lifted her eyes. First, she saw the shoes. Black, Italian leather polished so perfectly they caught the chandelier light. Then the suit. Midnight blue, tailored with impossible precision. Then the hand at his side. Large, still, marked by a faint scar across the knuckles. Then the face. Dante Westbrook looked down at her with eyes as dark as the Chicago River at midnight. Behind him, a scarred man in a charcoal suit moved one hand toward his jacket. Dante lifted 2 fingers. The man stopped instantly. Avery's pulse slammed once hard enough to hurt. She knew. Before anyone said his name, she knew. The hallway had not gone silent because she was rude. It had gone silent because she was rude to him. Dante crouched slowly, bringing himself level with her. The movement was smooth and unhurried, which made it worse. A dangerous man in no hurry was a man who owned the room, the clock, and possibly the ending. He picked up one of her fallen place cards, turned it over, and read her name. Avery Monroe, he said. His voice was low, calm, almost gentle. That almost was terrifying. Avery tried to breathe. Mr. Westbrook, I apologize. I thought you were someone else. His gaze lifted from the card to her mouth, then to her eyes. A slow smile touched one corner of his lips. What did you call me? Avery's throat went dry. The answer sat between them, small and fatal. She did not say it. Not yet. Dante leaned closer just enough that the scent of cedar smoke and cold rain cut through the gardenias. His smile deepened. Say it again, he murmured. Slower. Avery stared at Dante Westbrook from the floor of the VIP corridor with her scattered papers between them and her pride somewhere beneath his polished shoes. His words hung in the air. Say it again. Slower. Every sensible part of her mind screamed at her to apologize. Lower her eyes, collect her things, and pray. This man forgot her name before dessert service. But Dante did not look like a man who forgot anything. He watched her with calm interest as if the entire gala, the staff, the guards, even the city outside had faded into background noise. Avery forced herself to swallow. I said, baby, she whispered. The word came out small, but it did not break. Dante's smile widened by a breath. Not enough to be kind, just enough to be dangerous. There she is, he murmured. Avery's cheeks burned. I was talking to my assistant. Were you? Yes. And you call your assistant baby when she saves my life professionally. His eyes moved over her face with the slow precision of a blade drawn from silk. Interesting. It is not interesting. It is a workplace habit, a reckless one. I am discovering that. For one suspended second, his expression did not change. Then, something like amusement moved through him. It was subtle, almost private, but Avery saw it. Worse, she felt it like heat under her skin. Dante rose to his full height and offered his hand. Avery looked at it. His hand was large, steady, unhurried. The kind of hand that made people sign contracts they regretted and enemies step backward without being told. A faint scar crossed his knuckles. His cuff was held by a black onyx link that probably cost more than her rent. She should not take it. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and firm, and he pulled her to her feet with no effort at all. Her balance failed for half a second, and her free hand landed against his chest. Solid, still. He looked down at where her palm pressed his suit. Avery snatched her hand back. "I apologize for the collision, Mr. Westbrook." Dante. Her eyes lifted. "Excuse me, if you're going to call me baby in front of my men, you can call me Dante." The scarred man behind him shifted. His face remained blank, but Avery had the distinct feeling he was trying not to react. She bent quickly, gathering the last of her papers, eager to have something to do with her hands. "I appreciate the generosity, but I have a ballroom full of donors waiting to discover their seating arrangements are less flattering than expected. Enjoy the gala." She turned. The scarred man stepped into her path. Not aggressively, not with a dramatic movement. He simply appeared there, broad shoulders blocking the corridor, eyes cold and patient. Avery stopped. Slowly, she turned back to Dante. He was adjusting one cuff, looking entirely too comfortable with the fact that his people could stop a woman from leaving without saying a word. "You are not going anywhere," he said. Her heartbeat kicked hard. "I am the senior event producer, I know. I have 500 guests to manage. You have one guest to manage." Her grip tightened around the clipboard. "That is not how this works." Dante stepped closer. "It is tonight." Avery looked past him toward the distant glow of the ballroom. She could hear the string quartet beginning the first piece. Doors were opening. Guests were moving. Somewhere, Marvin was likely sweating through another layer of his soul. She could also feel Cole Harlan at her back, silent as a locked door. Avery lifted her chin. Fine. Dante's brows rose slightly. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "If I am managing you, then you will not block service routes. You will not summon my staff like they are footmen in a Gothic novel. And you will not touch an auction paddle unless you actually intend to donate." A pause. Then Dante laughed under his breath. It was not loud, it was barely even a sound, but it changed his face in a way that made Avery's stomach tighten. "Is that an order, Avery Monroe?" "It is a professional recommendation. I like your recommendations. You have heard one, and already I am entertained." That was not the goal. "No," Dante said, his eyes resting on hers. "I imagine it rarely is." He turned and walked toward the ballroom. Cole moved aside. Avery stood for 1 second longer, breathing through the absurdity of her situation. Then she followed because apparently that was her life now. She had offended the most dangerous man in Chicago, and his chosen response was to make her part of the evening's entertainment. The ballroom changed when Dante entered. Conversations thinned. Laughter softened. Men who had been speaking with grand hand gestures suddenly remembered how pockets worked. A judge near the champagne tower looked away so quickly, Avery almost felt sorry for him. Dante noticed everything. He walked through the room with the relaxed pace of someone who never had to wonder if space would open for him. It did. People made room before he reached them. Some nodded. Some smiled too brightly. Some pretended not to see him at all. Avery stayed at his side, holding her clipboard like armor. At table 1, 3 men stood as Dante approached. Not because manners demanded it, because instinct did. Dante did not sit immediately. He glanced at the table, setting the flowers, the candle placement, then at Avery. "Is this your best table? It is the most visible table." That was not my question. "It is the table designed for the most powerful guest." "And am I?" Avery met his gaze. "You are the guest everyone is currently pretending not to watch." His mouth curved. "Careful. I thought we established that I am bad at that." This time, the amusement in his eyes was clear. He sat. Avery took a position 2 steps behind him, where she could see the ballroom and still pretend she was not being held socially hostage by a criminal king in a midnight suit. Cole stood 10 feet away near a pillar, his hands folded in front of him. He looked like a man who could turn stillness into a threat. A waiter approached with a tray. Dante did not look at the champagne. Avery did. "That is the wrong label," she said quietly. The waiter froze. Dante looked over his shoulder. Avery stepped forward, plucked 1 flute from the tray and examined the bottle in the waiter's hand. "Table 1 gets the reserve champagne. This is for table 7. The waiter paled. "I am sorry, Miss Monroe. Do not apologize. Fix it." He vanished. Dante watched her. "You know champagne by the label. I know panic by the face. Useful. It keeps people from yelling. In my experience, yelling has its place. In my experience, yelling means someone failed earlier." That landed. Dante leaned back in his chair, fingers resting near the base of his untouched glass. "The man near the ice sculpture," he said. Avery followed his gaze. "Navy tuxedo. Silver watch. Laughing too hard, yes. Who is he? Calvin Reeve. Real estate developer. Donated $2 million last year, underpaid 3 contractors, and once made a valet cry over a scratch that existed only in his imagination." Dante's eyes narrowed faintly. Why does he keep looking at the south doors? Because his ex-wife just arrived with her new husband. Dante waited. Avery glanced again. And because the new husband is younger, taller, and standing closer to the press photographer. Dante took in the scene. Then he looked back at Avery. "You saw all that. From here I made the seating chart. I know where everyone wishes they were sitting instead. That sounds like power. It is mostly Excel and emotional damage." His mouth twitched. The waiter returned with the correct champagne. Avery gave 1 small nod. The flute was placed beside Dante. He did not drink from it. Instead, he kept asking questions. The woman in red near the silent auction. The man avoiding Senator Briggs. The couple speaking near the orchid wall. The photographer who looked too interested in the east exits. Avery answered each one. She did not always know everything, but she knew enough. Names, donations, grudges, affairs, allergies, addictions disguised as preferences. She knew which smile meant boredom, which laugh meant fear, which guest was rich enough to be rude, and which was only pretending. Dante listened as if every word mattered. That unsettled her more than the threat of Cole at her back. Most powerful men heard only what confirmed they were powerful. Dante absorbed information like a man mapping a battlefield. "You do not just plan events," he said eventually. Avery kept her eyes on the room. "No, you read people. That is event planning." "No," he said softly, "that is survival." She looked at him then. For a second the noise of the ballroom seemed to fold around them. His face held no mockery now, no teasing, just recognition. Like he had named something in her she had never had the luxury to explain. Avery looked away first. "Your champagne is getting warm. I am not here for champagne. I am afraid to ask what you are here for." "You should be." Before she could respond, the air near the table changed. It was subtle at first, a ripple through the room, heads turning then turning away, a waiter stepping back too quickly. Cole's shoulders tightening by a fraction. Dante did not move. Avery followed the shift and saw a man approaching table 1. He was older than Dante by at least 20 years, with silver hair combed away from a face that had been handsome once and cruel for longer. His tuxedo was perfect. His smile was elegant. His eyes were dead winter. 2 men followed him, both dressed like guests, neither wearing the softness that came with safety. Dante set his glass down without drinking. "Victor," he said. The name made Avery's stomach drop. Victor Kane. Even she knew that one. The Kane outfit controlled pieces of Cicero parts of Milwaukee and enough trucking routes to make federal agents develop migraines. If Dante Westbrook was Chicago's beautiful nightmare, Victor Kane was the older monster that had refused to die. Victor stopped at the edge of the table, smiling like he had found Dante at a family reunion instead of across a field of buried knives. "Dante Westbrook at a charity gala," Victor said. "I almost did not believe it when I heard. Thought you might be too busy cleaning up that mess near the Calumet docks." The temperature at the table seemed to fall. Cole took one step forward. Dante lifted his fingers slightly. Cole stopped. Dante looked at Victor with lazy calm. A minor inconvenience. Victor smiled wider. 3 burned trucks sounds like more than minor. Depends what was in them. Victor's eyes sharpened. Avery stood very still behind Dante's chair, suddenly aware of how many people in the ballroom had noticed the conversation and chosen not to appear interested. Dante continued, voice smooth. "You look well, Victor. I see the subpoenas have not affected your appetite." Victor chuckled. "I have always believed in a full stomach and a clean conscience. That must be difficult, since you have neither." For one moment, Victor's smile hardened. Then his gaze slid past Dante and landed on Avery. It moved over her badge, her clipboard, the practical heels, the loose curl at her cheek. His expression shifted into something oily and dismissive. "And who is this?" Victor asked. "You bringing staff to the grown men's table now?" The words struck exactly where they were meant to. Avery had been called staff in every tone known to mankind. Some people said it kindly. Some said it without thinking. Some used it as a reminder that she was allowed in the room only because she knew how to make it beautiful for them. But Victor said it like dirt on a shoe. Avery's fingers tightened on the clipboard. Before she could speak, Dante stood. The room noticed. Not openly. Nobody wanted to be seen noticing. But the entire ballroom held its breath behind polite smiles and half-lifted glasses. Dante did not rush. He rose with the quiet control of a man who understood that violence was louder when it did not need to shout. He turned toward Avery. For one confusing second, she thought he meant to send her away. Instead, he reached for her. His hand settled at her waist and drew her forward close against his side. Avery's breath caught. Her palm landed against his chest again, this time in front of half the city's elite and one rival mob boss who was no longer smiling. Dante's body was warm through the suit, hard, immovable. His thumb pressed lightly against her waist, not possessive enough to hurt, but deliberate enough to send fire up her spine. "She is not staff to you," Dante said. Victor's gaze moved between them. No. Dante's voice dropped lower. "She is with me." The words spread through the space around them like ink in water. Avery felt them settle on her skin. With me. Not behind me, not beneath me, not working for me. With me. She hated that her heartbeat reacted before her common sense did. Victor's expression tightened, then smoothed. "My mistake." It was. Victor looked at Avery again. This time he did not look bored. He looked curious. Dante noticed. The hand at Avery's waist became still. "If you look at her like she can be bought, borrowed, or broken," Dante said, I will take every warehouse you own from Cicero to Milwaukee and leave you with nothing but your church shoes and your mother's disappointment." Victor's eyes went flat. Around them, silence deepened. Avery could hear the string quartet playing on, as if music could cover the sound of powerful men threatening war over candlelight. Victor took one slow breath. "Still dramatic, I see. Still alive, I see." Victor's smile returned thinner than before. "Enjoy the gala, Dante." He looked at Avery. "Miss Monroe." The way he said her name made her feel like he had pocketed it. Then he turned and walked away, his men following close. Dante did not release her immediately. Avery remained against him, rigid with adrenaline, her fingers curled in the lapel of his jacket. She became aware slowly and horribly of how close they were, of the scent of cedar and smoke, of his breath near her temple, of the fact that every person in a 20-foot radius was pretending not to watch the Mafia boss hold the event planner like a warning. "You can let go of me now," she said under her breath. Dante looked down at her. "Can I?" Her face heated. Yes. His thumb moved once at her waist, a small motion, devastating. "You played along very well. I did not know I was playing. That was probably why you were convincing." Avery pushed lightly against his chest. This time he let her go. She stepped back and smoothed her blazer, though nothing about her felt smooth. "You do not get to use me as furniture in a dominance contest." Dante adjusted his cuff. "I used you as a warning. That is worse. It kept him from thinking you were unprotected. I did not ask for protection." "No," Dante said. "You asked me to move my foot and called me baby. That was an accident, one of my favorites." Her eyes narrowed. "You have known me for 20 minutes, and yet you have made them memorable." Avery looked toward Victor, who had joined a cluster of men near the auction table. He was speaking casually now, smiling at a woman in pearls, but his gaze cut back to her once, cold, assessing. Dante saw her see it. "He will not touch you." Avery turned back. "You say that like you control every bad thing in this room." "I control enough. That must be exhausting." Dante's expression shifted just barely. For the first time all night she had the sense she had touched something real. Then it was gone. "You should return to your crisis," he said. Avery blinked. "You are dismissing me for now. How generous. Do not mistake generosity for strategy." "I would not dare." She turned to leave, then stopped. The professional part of her could not help itself. "Your table is too exposed from the balcony." Dante looked at her. She pointed subtly with her clipboard. If someone wanted a clear line of sight, they would have one from there. The floral installation blocks the security camera angle, but not the view. Cole, 10 feet away, looked sharply toward the balcony. Dante did not. He looked only at Avery. "You noticed that when Victor walked in." "People look at threats. I look at exits." Dante was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Cole." Cole stepped closer. "Move 2 men upstairs." Quietly. Cole nodded once and left. Avery held Dante's gaze. "You are welcome." "I did not thank you." "You were about to." His mouth curved. "There's that confidence again. It is not confidence. It is sleep deprivation in heels." Dante reached toward her, and for one wild second she thought he might touch her face. Instead, he lifted a loose seating card from her clipboard and slid it back into place. His fingers brushed hers. Avery hated that she noticed. "Go, Avery." She backed away, then turned into the movement of the ballroom, grateful for the noise, the guests, the work. Work made sense. Work had tasks. Work did not look at her like it had just discovered a new appetite. For the next hour, Avery tried to return to her normal rhythm. She fixed the champagne issue. She stopped Senator Briggs from switching tables with a donor he disliked. She rescued Ethan from a woman demanding to know whether the mousse had been made with ethically sourced cocoa. She calmed Marvin down twice, but Dante was everywhere, not physically. He stayed mostly at table 1, speaking little, drinking less, watching more than any guest should. But Avery felt him in the room like a second pulse. When she crossed near the stage, his eyes found her. When she laughed at something Tessa said, his gaze sharpened. When Victor Kane passed too close to the auction display, Cole appeared beside him like a shadow with hands. At 9:30, the auction began. At 10:15, the mayor gave a speech about hope, while 3 men near the back checked their phones in perfect unison. At 10:40, Avery stood near the service doors and finally let herself breathe. Tessa appeared beside her with 2 glasses of water. "You look like you got adopted by a wolf," Tessa whispered. Avery took 1 glass. "Do not start. I am absolutely starting. Did Dante Westbrook put his hand on your waist?" It was a tactical waist. Tessa stared. "That is not a thing. It is tonight. Are you okay?" Avery looked across the room. Dante was speaking with a man from the foundation board. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were not. They moved once to Avery, as if pulled there. She looked away first. "I do not know." Tessa's humor faded. "Do you want me to get you out of here?" Avery almost said yes. Then she saw Victor Kane near the exit watching her again. Not Dante. Her. Avery's stomach tightened. "No," she said quietly. "Not yet." The gala finally began to loosen near midnight. Guests drifted toward the exits carrying gift bags and secrets. Staff cleared glasses. The quartet packed up. Marvin hugged a foundation director with the desperate joy of a man who had not yet been sued. Avery stood near the ballroom doors, checking final vendor notes when Dante approached. No Cole beside him this time. Just Dante. That somehow made him more dangerous. "You survived," he said. "I usually do." Usually, there was a wedding in Naperville that came close. His eyes warmed with amusement. "I believe that story deserves wine. It deserves therapy." He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back. The ballroom was nearly empty now. The glitter was still there, but tired. Candles burned low. Flowers drooped. The beautiful illusion had begun to show its wires. Dante studied her face. "You handled the night well. I handled my event well. You complicated it. You adapted. I had limited choices." His expression became unreadable. "Yes," he said softly. "You did." Something in his tone made Avery look at him more closely. For the first time she wondered if he knew exactly how frightening he had been, not in a careless way, in a measured one. As if fear was a language he spoke fluently and sometimes hated that it was the only language people understood from him. She did not know why that thought made her sad. She did not want to feel sad for Dante Westbrook. That seemed like the kind of mistake women made right before ruining their lives. "I need to finish closing the event," she said. "Of course." She turned. His voice stopped her. "Avery," she looked back. Dante stepped closer and caught her wrist gently. Gently mattered. The hallway, the table, Victor's stare, his hand at her waist. None of it had felt gentle. But this did. His thumb rested over her pulse and she knew he could feel how fast it beat. "Go home," he said. "That was the plan. Lock your door." The words were quiet. Avery's mouth went dry. Is that advice or a threat? His eyes did not leave hers. Advice. Her pulse jumped beneath his fingers. Why Dante released her wrist. For a moment he looked toward the ballroom, toward the high windows where Chicago glittered beyond the glass. Then back at her, because Victor Kane learned your name tonight. Avery felt the room tilt slightly. "You said he would not touch me. He will not." But Dante's jaw tightened. But he will wonder why I cared enough to stop him from trying. Avery folded her arms partly because she was cold and partly because she needed something between them. And do you? Dante's gaze dropped to her mouth, then lifted again. Care. She wished she had not asked. She wished even more that he had not paused before answering. Yes, the word was simple, unadorned. It landed harder than any threat. Avery could not think of a single safe response. So she chose the professional one. Good night, Mr. Westbrook. His smile returned faint and dark. Back to Mr. Westbrook. You lost first-name privileges when you turned my gala into organized crime dinner theater. I behaved. You threatened a man between courses. He was rude. You are impossible. And yet, Dante said softly, you are still here. Avery hated the truth of that enough to step back. Not anymore. She walked away before he could answer. This time, nobody stopped her. The service hallway felt too bright after him, too ordinary. Staff were stacking chairs, rolling linens, counting leftover bottles. Tessa was arguing with the caterer about missing dessert spoons. Marvin was near the entrance, practically glowing with relief. Avery threw herself into cleanup. She signed vendor forms, checked coat-room claims, approved the late transport invoice, found the missing champagne bottles hidden behind a floral crate. Listened to Marvin praise her with the emotional intensity of a man who had no idea how close she had come to being swallowed whole by something much larger than his company. By 2 a.m, she was finally alone in the staff restroom, palms braced against the sink, staring at herself in the mirror. Her lipstick had faded. Her eyes looked too bright. At her waist, where Dante's hand had rested, her body seemed to remember pressure that was no longer there. She turned on the cold water and ran it over her wrists. Get it together, she whispered. The woman in the mirror did not look convinced. When Avery finally reached her small apartment in Logan Square, the city was quiet in that rare way Chicago sometimes became after midnight, as if even the traffic needed sleep. Her place was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building with unreliable heat and a neighbor who played jazz records on Sunday mornings. It was not much, but it was hers. She locked the door. Then, after a pause, she locked the deadbolt too. Dante's voice followed her through the apartment. Lock your door. She kicked off her heels, winced at the marks on her feet, and dropped her blazer over a chair. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. You alive, Avery? Typed back. Physically. Tessa replied almost instantly. That is not as comforting as you think. Avery smiled despite herself. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. A black sedan rolled slowly past the building. Her smile faded. The car continued to the corner, turned and disappeared. It could have been nothing. In Chicago, black cars were not rare. Men in expensive suits were not rare. Danger, depending on the neighborhood and the hour, was not rare either. But Avery stood at the window long after the street emptied. Sleep came late and thin. When morning finally arrived, pale and gray against her curtains, Avery woke to her phone ringing. Marvin. She answered with her eyes still closed. Unless the hotel burned down, I am not awake, Avery Marvin said. His voice cracked on her name. She sat up. What happened? I need you at the office. Now. Yes. There was a sound in the background. Low voices. A door closing. Avery's fingers tightened around the phone. Marvin, who is there? He did not answer right away. Then very softly he said, Mr. Westbrook's people. Avery looked toward her locked door. The city outside kept moving, careless and bright. Her life had not ended in that hallway. It had been claimed there. Avery reached the Ellis and Vale office 27 minutes later, with damp hair, no breakfast, and a bad feeling sitting heavy beneath her ribs. The office occupied the second floor of a narrow brick building near River North above a boutique that sold handmade candles to people who thought stress could be solved with eucalyptus. Usually the second floor sounded alive before 9. Phones rang. Printers jammed. Assistants argued with florists. Someone always dropped a box of place cards. Someone always laughed too loudly near the coffee machine. That morning, the silence met Avery at the top of the stairs. It was not empty silence. It was frightened silence, the kind people made when they were trying very hard not to be noticed. Avery pushed through the glass door and stopped. Every desk was occupied, but nobody was working. Designers stared at blank screens. A junior planner held a coffee cup with both hands and did not drink. 2 interns stood near the sample linen wall like they had forgotten why legs existed. At the far end of the office, Marvin Ellis stood beside his desk in a navy suit that looked slept in. His face was pale, his forehead damp, and his smile appeared to have been assembled badly in a hurry. Beside him stood Cole Harlan. The scar across Cole's cheek looked harsher in daylight. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and the expression of a locked vault. His hands were folded in front of him. Avery knew without seeing it that there was a weapon beneath his jacket. On Marvin's desk sat a cream envelope sealed with black wax. Avery closed the door behind her. "No," she said. Marvin gave a small miserable sound. "Avery, please. I have not heard the offer, and my answer is already no." Cole looked at her. Mr. Westbrook expected resistance. Did he also expect coffee? Because I have had none, and that makes me less charming. No one laughed. Avery walked forward, slow and controlled. She refused to hurry inside her own workplace, refused to look afraid in front of people who already looked terrified enough for her. She stopped at Marvin's desk and looked down at the envelope. The seal bore a black-lettered W pressed into wax. Elegant, arrogant. "Of course. What is this?" she asked. Marvin swallowed. "A contract." "I know what paper is, Marvin. Why is it on your desk with a bodyguard beside it?" Cole's voice was flat. "Mr. Westbrook has retained Ellis and Vale events exclusively for the next 4 weeks." Avery looked at him. "Good for Ellis and Vale. He specifically requested you." Her jaw tightened. The room seemed to lean closer without moving. Avery turned to Marvin. "You signed something." Marvin's eyes flicked away. That was answer enough. Avery felt heat rise in her chest. Not panic yet. Anger first. Anger had cleaner edges. "Marvin." He lifted both hands. "He made an extraordinary offer. He made you afraid. He paid every outstanding vendor invoice." Avery went still. Marvin continued voice cracking under the weight of relief and shame. He covered payroll for 6 months. He paid the hotel balance from the Winston wedding. He settled the tax issue. Avery stared at him. The office air felt too thin. "You had no right. I know." "No, I do not think you do." "Avery, if I did not sign it, we were done by Friday." She hated the truth in that sentence, hated how it reached past her anger and touched the part of her that had seen the red numbers, the delayed checks, the quiet fear hiding in Marvin's office. Cole reached into his jacket. Avery's entire body locked. He removed a folded document, not a gun, and placed it on the desk. "Transportation is waiting downstairs." Avery gave a short laugh. "Absolutely not. Mr. Westbrook would like to speak with you. Mr. Westbrook can use a phone. He said you might say that, then he is learning." Cole's face did not change. "He said to remind you that refusal would violate the contract your employer signed." Avery turned on Marvin. "You signed away my time?" Marvin looked like he might collapse. "I signed for company services. I am not company property." "No," Cole said. Avery turned back to him. Cole's voice remained steady. "Mr. Westbrook agrees. Does he?" because this feels very property adjacent. He asked for you because he believes you are the only person qualified for the event. What event, Cole did not answer. Avery stared at him for a long second, then picked up the cream envelope and broke the seal. Inside was a contract thick enough to qualify as a weapon. Her eyes moved across the opening page, then stopped on the fee. For one moment she forgot to breathe. It was not generous, it was obscene. Enough to save Ellis and Vale. Enough to pay every staff member, rebuild vendor, trust, cover debt, and still leave Marvin with a company instead of a memory. It was also enough to make Avery understand exactly what kind of trouble required that much money. She placed the papers back on the desk. No. Cole blinked once. It was the first sign of emotion she had seen from him. Avery lifted her bag from her shoulder, took out her phone, and set it beside the contract. I will speak to him. I will not be taken anywhere. Cole's gaze moved to the window. Down on the street, 3 black SUVs waited at the curb engines, running hazard lights, blinking as if traffic laws were only suggestions for other people. Avery followed his look and felt her stomach drop. One of the junior planners whispered, "Oh my God." Avery picked up her phone again. "Fine," she said quietly. Marvin exhaled as if he had been underwater. Avery pointed at him. "This conversation is not over. I know. No, Marvin. You hope it is not over because that means I come back alive." His face crumpled. She regretted the cruelty as soon as it left her mouth, but not enough to apologize. Cole stepped aside, allowing her to pass. As Avery walked through the office, Tessa burst from the back conference room with her coat half on and murder in her eyes. "I am coming." Avery stopped. "No, you are not." "Yes, I am." "Tessa, no, you do not get to vanish into a parade of mafia cars while I sit here arranging peonies and pretending this is fine." Cole looked at Tessa. "Mr. Westbrook did not request you." Tessa looked him up and down. "And yet, here I stand." Avery almost smiled despite everything. Cole considered her. Then he touched his earpiece, listened for a moment, and nodded once. "Fine." Tessa's expression faltered. "That worked." "Apparently." Avery grabbed Tessa's wrist and pulled her close. "You stay quiet, you stay near me, and if I tell you to run, you run." Tessa's eyes softened. "Same rule for you." They went downstairs together. The city morning was bright and ordinary, which made the black SUVs look even more unreal. People passed on the sidewalk holding coffees, scrolling phones, heading to work as if Avery's life had not just been folded into a contract with a wax seal. Cole opened the rear door of the middle vehicle. Avery climbed in first. Tessa followed. The seats were black leather. The windows were tinted so deeply the city outside looked like a memory. Cole sat in front next to the driver. Another SUV pulled ahead. The third settled behind them. Avery watched Chicago slide by in silence, past glass towers and river bridges, past delivery trucks and pedestrians, past the version of her life that had rules she understood. Tessa leaned close and whispered, "Do you think they have snacks?" Avery stared at her. "What fear makes me hungry." Despite herself, Avery breathed out something almost like a laugh. Cole spoke from the front seat. "There is water in the console." Tessa opened the console and found 6 glass bottles perfectly chilled. She looked at Avery. "Of course, mafia water is glass." Avery did not laugh this time. Her phone buzzed, a hospital billing notification. She turned the screen over before Tessa could see, but Tessa saw anyway. She always did. "Aves," she whispered. "Not now." Tessa reached for her hand, but Avery kept her fingers clenched around the strap of her bag. The drive stretched north. The city softened into suburbs, then highways, then open stretches of road lined with trees just beginning to turn under the gray morning sky. The farther they went, the more Avery felt the shape of the trap. not a cage. A cage was simple. This was worse. This was a door held open by money, loyalty, fear, and all the responsibilities Avery could not abandon without becoming someone she would hate. By the time the SUV turned through black iron gates near Lake Geneva, Tessa had stopped making jokes. The Westbrook estate rose from the edge of the lake like something built by a man who did not believe in neighbors. Limestone walls, tall windows, dark roof lines cutting into the white sky. The water beyond it looked cold and endless silver under the morning light. Men stood near the driveway in suits too fitted to hide what they carried beneath them. Avery stepped out of the SUV and looked at the mansion. "Subtle," she said. Cole closed the door behind her. "Mr. Westbrook is in the library." "Of course he is." Tessa looked at the house. "Do villains get a catalog for this kind of thing?" Avery shot her a look. Tessa raised both hands. "Quiet. Near you. Run if told." "I remember." Cole led them inside. The foyer was vast and almost offensively beautiful. Black marble floor. A sweeping staircase. Oil paintings older than several states. Fresh white roses in crystal vases. The place smelled faintly of lemon-polish wood smoke and money that did not need to explain itself. Avery did not let herself look impressed. Impressed was how places like this won. Cole stopped outside a set of dark mahogany doors. "Tessa Grant waits here." Tessa opened her mouth. Avery shook her head once. Tessa closed it, but her face made clear she hated every inch of this arrangement. Cole opened the doors. Avery stepped into the library alone. The room was dim despite the morning. Shelves climbed to the ceiling packed with leather-bound books that looked untouched and first editions that probably were not. A fire burned low in a stone fireplace. Rain tapped lightly at the tall windows facing the lake. Dante Westbrook stood behind a wide desk reading a file. He was not wearing a jacket. His white shirt was open at the collar sleeves rolled to his forearms. Dark ink curled over his skin, disappearing beneath the fabric. In daylight, he looked less like a roomer and more like a man who had slept even less than she had. He looked up. His eyes found hers. Avery. Her name in his mouth sounded like something private. She walked to his desk and dropped the contract onto it. "You bought my company. I saved it. You bought my boss. I convinced him. You sent cars to my office. You came willingly." She placed both hands on the desk and leaned forward. "Do not mistake the absence of screaming for consent." The room went quiet. Dante studied her. Then he closed the file and set it aside. "No," he said, "I will not." That answer slowed her anger for half a second. She hated that. "I am not yours," she said. Dante came around the desk. "No." He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. That surprised her more than if he had crowded her. "You are not." Avery searched his face for mockery and found none. "Then why am I here? Because I need you." The fire cracked softly. Avery folded her arms. "Men like you do not need event planners. Men like me need rooms to look harmless while dangerous things happen inside them." Her stomach tightened. Dante walked to a side table and poured water into a glass. He offered it to her. She did not take it. He set it down. "In 3 weeks, I am hosting a private summit here." "What kind of summit? The kind that keeps men from killing each other in public?" Avery stared at him. "No." "You asked." "No, as in I am not doing this. You do not know what this is. I know enough from that sentence." Dante's expression remained calm, but his eyes sharpened. "The major powers around the Great Lakes will be under one roof. Chicago, Milwaukee, Detroit, Cleveland. Men who control ports, warehouses, trucking routes, customs brokers, judges' unions, and half the secrets buried beneath this region." Avery felt cold move through her. To the public, Dante continued, "It is a fundraiser for lakefront restoration. Politicians, donors, press music champagne, all of it clean enough to photograph. Beneath that, in a secured room below the wine cellar, the summit happens. Then hire a security firm. I have security. Hire a better one. I did." She blinked. He looked at her. Avery laughed once without humor. "You cannot be serious. I am always serious when my life is involved. I design room flow. I do not run criminal diplomacy. You read people. You track movement. You notice what does not belong. Last night you spotted a balcony exposure my own men missed. That does not make me qualified for whatever this is." "No," Dante said. "But it makes you useful." Avery stepped closer, anger returning. "Useful is a word people use before they stop seeing you as human." Something moved in his face. Not guilt exactly. Recognition. "I see you clearly," he said. She wished he had not said it so quietly. She looked away first toward the windows, toward the lake pushing gray light against the glass. "Why me, Victor Kane?" The name settled into the room like smoke. Dante continued, "He has placed people inside one of the catering companies approved for the event. I know they are there. He thinks I do not. Then remove the company. If I do, he knows I know. So you want to let his people inside. I want to control where they stand, what they touch, who they speak to, and how long they believe they are invisible." Avery looked back at him. "And you need an event planner for that. I need a woman who can tell the difference between a nervous waiter and a man pretending to be one." She hated that the answer made sense. She hated even more that part of her mind was already working. Staff routes, badge systems, kitchen choke points, guest sightlines, service elevators, emergency exits. If people were hiding inside a catering crew, the event floor was not decoration. It was terrain. Dante saw the shift in her face. "You are already planning. I am thinking about how reckless this is. That too." Avery moved away from the desk, needing distance. "What about the FBI? They know enough to watch, not enough to stop it. And you are comfortable with that. I am comfortable with very little." It was the first, honest sentence that did not sound rehearsed. Avery turned toward him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "Tessa stays." Dante's eyes narrowed slightly. "She is not involved. She is now. You brought her here. I allowed her to come because Cole valued his mourning." Avery almost smiled. "Almost. Tessa stays or I leave. You said you were not staying. I am negotiating from a position of rage. Keep up." This time, Dante did smile. Small. Real enough to be dangerous. What else? Avery took one breath. If she was going to be trapped by circumstances, she would at least choose the shape of the cage. No visible weapons on the event floor. No. Yes. My men stay armed. Your men can be armed without looking like an execution squad at a charity fundraiser. Dress them as servers, drivers, bored husbands, donors with bad personalities. I do not care. But no one scares civilians into asking questions. Dante watched her. She continued, "My staff cannot be threatened, not by you, not by Cole, not by anyone with a shoulder holster and childhood trauma." A faint movement at the library doors told her Cole had heard that from outside. Dante's mouth twitched. "Agreed. I control layout, vendor access, staff badges, service routes, lighting, guest flow, and emergency evacuation." Emergency evacuation. If you are putting innocent people above a mafia summit, then yes, Dante. They get a way out. His expression changed when she said his name. Only slightly, but she caught it. "You think I would risk civilians carelessly. I think powerful men call it collateral when they do not want to say people." The fire snapped. Dante's jaw tightened. Avery did not look away. At last he said, "Agreed." she breathed in. And after the event, Ellison Vale is released from any further obligation. Yes, in writing, yes. You pay every member of my team hazard rates, yes. And I get full floral authority. Dante stared at her. Avery stared back. Full floral authority, he repeated. If the lie is a fundraiser, it needs to look like one. Wealthy donors forgive many things, but not sad centerpieces. The silence held for 3 seconds. Then Dante laughed. Not the controlled amusement from the gala. A real laugh, low and surprised, spilling through the library like the room had briefly forgotten who owned it. Avery felt it in a place she did not appreciate. Dante walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, and removed a pen. Anything else? Yes, she said. You do not pay my personal bills. His hand stilled over the contract. He looked up. Avery felt her stomach drop before he said anything. Too late, she understood. What did you do? She asked. Dante's face gave nothing away. You received a hospital call this morning. Her blood went cold. How do you know that I know many things? Wrong answer. He closed the drawer slowly. I had your mother's account reviewed. Avery could not move. The room seemed to narrow around him. You had no right. No, he said. The word was quiet, not defensive. That made it worse. No, I did not. Avery's voice shook. Did you pay it? Yes. Her hands curled into fists. I told you not to buy me. I did not. You paid my mother's hospital bill without asking me. What would you call that? His eyes held hers. A mistake that stopped her. Not enough to soften her, but enough to make her listen. Dante stepped closer, then stopped when he saw her stiffen. I solve problems with money because money is usually the cleanest tool I have. This is my life, not a balance sheet. I know that now. Do you? Yes. The simplicity of it cut some of the heat from her anger, leaving something more painful beneath. Avery looked toward the window again, because if she kept looking at him, she might say something too honest. My mother does not know men like you exist. Good. She thinks I plan weddings and galas for people with more money than taste. You do. And now you plan one for me. She turned back. This is not funny. No, Dante said. It is not. For once he looked tired, not weak, never that, but tired in the way old houses were tired holding too many locked rooms. Avery picked up the pen from his desk and turned to the contract. I want an amendment. Name it. If you ever interfere in my family's life again without asking me, I walk. Contract or no contract. Dante did not hesitate. Done. She searched his face for the trap. There was none she could see. He wrote the amendment himself. His handwriting was sharp, controlled, almost old-fashioned. He signed beneath it and slid the paper to her. Avery read every word. Then she signed. The pen felt heavier than it should have. When she set it down, something changed in the room. Not peace. Never peace. But structure, terms, lines drawn in ink. Dante picked up the contract and placed it in a leather folder. Cole will give you the estate maps. Cole hates me. Cole hates everyone. You are not special yet. Avery opened the library doors. Tessa nearly fell forward from where she had clearly been listening. Avery looked at her. Tessa straightened. I was admiring the woodwork, of course. Cole stood beside her, expression unchanged. Avery pointed at him. I need full estate maps, staff lists, vendor contracts, badge access records, security camera coverage, kitchen layouts, and the name of every person who thinks centerpieces are optional. Cole looked past her to Dante. Dante leaned against the desk, arms folded. She has full authority. Cole's eyes returned to Avery. Something almost like respect touched his face. Almost. Yes, Miss Monroe. Tessa whispered. That was hot. Avery whispered back. Do not make this worse. Dante came to the doorway. Tessa Grant. Tessa froze. Yes. Terrifying, handsome, criminal man. Avery closed her eyes. Dante looked amused. You will work directly under Avery. No one gives you orders unless they come from her, Cole, or me. Tessa nodded slowly. I can live with that hierarchy. Avery turned toward the grand foyer. Her mind had already begun building the event against her will. The lakeside terrace could handle arrivals if weather held. The west corridor was too narrow for emergency movement. The wine cellar access would need disguising. The ballroom sightlines were strong, but the balcony was a problem. Catering staff needed color-coded badges. Tessa would manage verification. Cole's men would hate the uniforms. Good. Avery stopped at the center of the foyer, looked up at the chandelier, then at the marble floors. First change, she said. Cole waited. No black rugs. Cole blinked. Why? Because blood shows less on black, and if anyone chose them for that reason, I do not want to know. Use ivory. Tessa looked at her with wide eyes. Cole touched his earpiece. Replace black rugs with ivory. Avery began walking again. Behind her, Dante's voice followed low and warm enough to make her pulse betray her. Welcome to Lake Geneva, baby. She did not turn around, but she did answer. Call me that again, and I am tripling the floral budget. Dante's laugh followed her down the hall, rich and dark, as the mansion opened around her like a beautiful trap she had just agreed to decorate. The mansion opened around Avery like a beautiful trap, and by noon she had already started making it obey her. That was the part Dante Westbrook had not expected. He had expected fear, anger, maybe refusal wrapped in sarcasm. He had expected Avery Monroe to treat his estate like enemy ground, which it was. What he had not expected was for her to stand in the middle of his grand foyer with a pencil tucked behind one ear, a legal pad in one hand, and order 3 armed men to move a 12-foot marble console table because it disrupted guest flow. The men looked at her. Then they looked at Cole. Cole looked at Dante. Dante, watching from the curve of the staircase, said nothing. Avery glanced up at him. Do not make me repeat myself. Dante's mouth curved. The men moved the table. Tessa stood beside the linen samples with her arms folded and her eyes wide. I have seen miracles, and they wear practical heels. Avery ignored her, scanning the foyer. The Westbrook estate had been built to intimidate. High ceilings, black marble, heavy drapes, oil portraits of dead men who looked like they had never apologized in their lives. It was impressive, yes, but it was also cold. Too much shadow, too many corners, too many places where a person could stand unseen. That had to change. If this is supposed to be a lakefront restoration fundraiser, it needs warmth, Avery said. Right now, it looks like a cathedral for rich murder. Tessa coughed. Cole did not. Dante descended the stairs slowly, one hand brushing the banister. Rich murder has excellent architecture. Bad guest retention. Are we expecting repeat guests? We are expecting people to believe they attended a charity gala, not a funeral rehearsal. Dante stopped 2 steps above her, making no attempt to hide his amusement. You speak to everyone this way. Only difficult clients. I see. No, you really do not. For a second, the foyer went dangerously quiet. Then Dante laughed under his breath and stepped down onto the marble. Continue. So she did. Within 3 days, Avery had turned the estate into a living blueprint. She mapped every entrance, every staff corridor, every blind corner, every hidden stairwell. She marked where guests would drift after 2 glasses of champagne. She identified where donors would cluster for photographs, where politicians would try to hold private conversations, and where security could stand without looking like security. She replaced black rugs with ivory ones, not because she liked ivory, but because she wanted every problem visible. She moved the main bar away from the east exit. She turned the lake terrace into a controlled arrival point with 2 layers of check-in disguised as hospitality. She demanded that Cole's men learn how to carry trays. They hated that most of all. Avery stood in the ballroom one afternoon while a 6'4" guard with tattooed knuckles held a tray of champagne flutes like it contained live explosives. "Relax your wrist," she said. The guard stared at her. "I have shot men with this hand. Fantastic. Tonight, it needs to serve sparkling water without terrifying donors." Tessa covered her mouth with the event binder. Dante stood near the doorway, arms folded, watching silently. The guard adjusted his wrist. Avery nodded. "Better. Now smile." The guard looked physically wounded. Dante finally spoke. "You heard her." The guard smiled. It looked like a threat wearing teeth. Avery sighed. "We have work to do." By the end of the first week, the household staff had learned to ask Avery before moving anything. By the second week, Dante's men stopped calling her the event girl. Not because Dante ordered it, though he had not needed to. They stopped because she knew things they did not. She noticed when a delivery driver used the wrong entrance twice. She noticed when a bartender gave a fake last name and forgot it by lunch. She noticed when a temporary server looked at the basement door too often. Her world had always been details. The rich wanted beauty, but beauty was only the surface. Beneath it were patterns, pressure points, small human failures. Avery had built a career catching those failures before they became disasters. Dante watched her catch them. At first, he watched from a distance, from balconies, from doorways, from the far end of rooms where his men briefed him in low voices. He was always still, always composed, always listening to more than one conversation at once. But slowly, distance became habitually smaller. Late nights found them in the library, standing over estate maps and vendor lists. The room smelled of firewood ink and the dark coffee Dante drank long after midnight. Avery marked the floor plan with a red pen. "Your West Service corridor is a problem. It is reinforced. It is narrow. That is why it is defensible. It is also why 50 panicked guests would crush each other if someone screamed gun." Dante's jaw tightened. Avery met his eyes. "You asked me to make this look safe. I am telling you how to make it actually safe." His gaze held hers for a long moment. Then he turned to Cole, who stood near the mantel. "Open the garden passage during the event. Staff only. If evacuation starts, civilians move through it." Cole frowned. "That exposes the rear lawn, then cover it." Cole nodded. Avery looked back down at the map before Dante could see the effect his agreement had on her. Men like him were not supposed to listen. Not really. They were supposed to command, punish, decide. But Dante listened when she was right. He did not like it, but he did it. That made him more dangerous, not less. One evening she found him alone in the wine cellar corridor after a power test failed, and the lower-level lights died for 6 full minutes. Emergency lamps flickered red along the stone walls. The air was cold enough to raise bumps along her arms. Dante stood beside the sealed steel door that led to the underground summit room. His jacket was gone. His sleeves were rolled tattoos cutting dark lines over his forearms. "You should be upstairs," he said without turning. "You should have better backup generators." He looked at her then. The red light sharpened the angles of his face. For once, he looked less polished, more human, more tired. Avery stepped closer, holding the flashlight between them. "Does this door open from inside if the power fails?" "Yes." "Does it open from outside?" "Only with my code, Cole's code, or a manual override. Where is the override?" He did not answer. She lifted her brows. Dante's mouth moved faintly. "Behind the third rack on the left." "Thank you. You are asking questions my own men are afraid to ask. That seems like a management issue." He leaned one shoulder against the stone wall. "You are not afraid of me tonight." Avery's grip tightened on the flashlight. "That is not true. No, I'm afraid of you every day." His face changed. "Not much. Just enough." "Then why do you speak to me like that?" "Because fear is not useful unless it tells me where to stand." The corridor fell quiet. Avery heard the generator hum return somewhere deep in the walls. Light flickered back overhead, pale and steady. She should have left then. Instead, she stayed. Dante looked at her like she had said something in a language he knew too well. "My father believed fear was the only honest form of loyalty," he said. Avery lowered the flashlight. Dante's eyes shifted to the steel door. He built this house like a fortress. Every wall thicker than it needed to be. Every exit hidden. Every window watched. He thought if no one could reach him, no one could betray him. What happened? For a moment, Dante said nothing. Then he looked back at her. Someone already inside did it. Avery's breath slowed. She did not ask for details. She could feel them there in the corridor anyway. Blood on stone. A young man inheriting a kingdom of enemies. A son learning that walls did not stop knives when the hand holding one knew the way home. "That is why you trust no one," she said. "I trust Cole. And me." The question came out before she could stop it. Dante went very still. The space between them changed. It became smaller, though neither had moved. "I trust what you see," he said. Avery swallowed. "That is not the same thing." "No." His voice dropped. "It is a beginning." The lights steadied fully. Footsteps sounded above them, and the moment broke before either of them had to decide what it meant. Avery stepped back first. "Your generator is still garbage." Dante smiled, but his eyes remained dark. "I will have it replaced." "Good." She walked away with her pulse beating too fast, and the unsettling knowledge that Dante Westbrook had just shown her a locked room inside himself. The next morning, she found another locked room open. Not in the mansion, in her own life. She was in the temporary event office, a former sunroom overlooking the lake, when her phone buzzed with a message from the hospital billing department. Balance paid in full. Avery stared at the screen. The words did not make sense at first. Then they made too much sense. She found Dante in his office on a call, speaking softly in a tone that could have frozen water. He ended the call the moment she entered. "You paid my mother's bills." He did not pretend not to know. "Yes." Avery closed the door behind her. "How many times do I have to tell you that my life is not one of your companies?" Dante stood. "I thought it would help. It did help. That is the problem." His face tightened. She stepped closer, anger sharp enough to keep her voice from breaking. "You do things people need, then act surprised when they feel trapped by gratitude. That is not kindness. That is control, wearing a better suit." Dante absorbed the words without flinching. For once, he did not answer quickly. "You are right," he said. Avery blinked. It took some of the force out of her. She hated that too. He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out a slim folder. "I set up no further payments, no contact with the hospital, no contact with your family. The account is closed. I was wrong." Avery looked at the folder but did not take it. "Why did you do it?" Dante's eyes held hers. "Because I could. That is not a good reason." "No," he said. "It is only the reason I understood first." Silence settled between them. Then he added lower. "The better reason is that I saw you look at your phone in the ballroom that night. For 1 second, you looked like everything was about to break. Then you put the phone away and kept 500 people from noticing." Avery looked down. She remembered that second. The missed call, the gold light, the old fear. Dante's voice softened. I wanted to remove one weight. You should have asked. Yes. Avery finally took the folder. Their fingers brushed. Neither moved. Dante said, "Next time I ask." Her chest tightened in a way anger could not explain. There should not be a next time. His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth. Then I will ask anyway. Avery left before the room became too honest. By the third week, honesty had become the most dangerous thing in the house. It happened in glances first. Dante watching her as she argued with the florist about white orchids. Avery noticing he took his coffee black but never finished it when a meeting went badly. His hand resting at the small of her back for 1 second, as he guided her past a group of men in the hall, then falling away before she could protest. Her voice softening when she told him he needed to eat. He did not obey anyone easily, but one night after 14 hours of security briefings and layout revisions, she placed a plate beside his maps. He looked at it. "What is this food? I know what food is." "Then prove it." Cole from the fireplace stared straight ahead. Dante looked at Avery. "You are very demanding. You hired me for my standards. I hired you because you called me baby and did not faint. That was your first mistake." "No," he said, picking up the fork. "That was yours." She should not have smiled. She did. The threat from Victor Kane sharpened at the edges. Tessa found the first false record on a Tuesday afternoon. A catering assistant named Lucas Bell claimed 4 years of banquet service at a hotel that had closed its event division before he supposedly started. A second server used a social security number that belonged to a dead man in Ohio. A third had no digital history at all before 6 months ago. Avery spread the files across the sunroom table. Tessa stood beside her, arms wrapped around herself. "This is bad, right?" Avery looked through the glass toward the lawn where catering staff were unloading equipment for a rehearsal dinner setup. One man in a white jacket looked up. He smiled at her, not warmly, knowingly. Avery closed the file. "Yes," she said, "this is bad." Cole wanted to remove them immediately. Dante refused. Avery understood why, which bothered her almost as much as agreeing with him. "If we pull them now," she said, "Victor knows we spotted them." Cole's expression hardened. "If we leave them, they are inside." Avery tapped the floor plan. "Then we decide where inside is, so she redesigned the entire staff flow. The compromised catering crew would be placed in the west kitchen, far from the basement entry, with limited access to the ballroom and no reason to approach the cellar corridor. Every tray would pass through 2 checkpoints disguised as quality control. Every staff badge would carry a colored thread pattern visible only under the warm service lights. Every exit would have a watcher who looked like a bored valet or a donor's driver. Dante listened from the doorway. When she finished, he said, "You just built a cage out of hospitality." Avery did not look up. "I told you, theater keeps people alive." That night, Lake Geneva vanished beneath fog. Avery stood on the terrace wrapped in her coat, watching mist crawl over the water. The estate glowed behind her. Through the windows she could see staff moving like shadows through chandeliers and flowers. Dante came outside without a coat. "Do you ever dress for weather?" she asked. "Do you ever stop working?" "No." "Then no." He stood beside her, close but not touching. For a while, neither spoke. Then Dante said, "There is a car leaving for Chicago in the morning." Avery kept her eyes on the fog. "Good for the car. It can take you and Tessa." Now she looked at him. His face was unreadable, but there was tension in his jaw. "You are firing me. I am giving you the door." The words struck harder than she expected. 3 weeks ago, he had blocked every exit with men in dark suits and contracts heavy with money. Now he stood beside her in the cold and offered her the one thing she had demanded from the start: choice. Avery folded her arms tighter. "Why?" "Because tomorrow may not stay beautiful." And if I leave, Cole handles the floor. Badly. Tessa insults him. Marvin sends flowers. You go back to Chicago. That simple no. His eyes held hers. But it would be yours. Avery looked toward the house. She thought of her apartment, her mother's hospital room, Tessa sleeping badly in the guest suite, Marvin's trembling hands, the office saved by money she did not trust. She thought of Dante in the cellar speaking of his father. Dante at his desk admitting he was wrong. Dante eating because she told him to. Dante looking at her like she was not a weakness but a weather system he had not learned how to survive. And if I stay, she asked. Dante stepped closer. Then I stop pretending I only need you for the event. The fog moved around them. Avery felt the words settle against her skin. She should have stepped back. She should have made a joke. She should have remembered all the reasons men like Dante Westbrook ruined women like her. Instead, she said, "You still need me for the event." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Yes, and your West Kitchen checkpoint is understaffed." "Yes, and the balcony lighting still gives too much cover." "Yes, you are impossible." His voice lowered. "And yet you are still here." Avery looked away because the truth had become too visible between them. "I am here because you need someone competent." "No," Dante said. "You are here because you chose to be." She did not answer. The next evening, the estate became a dream with locked doors. White orchids spilled over every table. Black candles burned in crystal holders. Champagne cooled in silver tubs. The jazz trio tuned beside the grand windows while fog pressed itself against the glass like a ghost trying to get inside. Avery stood at the top of the ballroom stairs in a deep sapphire gown she had chosen herself. Not a gift from Dante, not a claim. Hers. Tessa clipped a tiny microphone beneath Avery's bracelet. "You look terrifying," Tessa said. "Thank you. I meant beautiful, but like you could fire someone during a murder investigation." "Also, thank you." Across the ballroom, Dante entered in a black tuxedo. For 1 second, the room lost sound. He saw Avery. Only Avery. His gaze moved over her not like Victor had looked at her, not like a man pricing something. Dante looked at her like he had found the one flame in a house full of shadows. He approached slowly. "You look dangerous," he said. Avery lifted her chin. "I look expensive. There is a difference. Not tonight." Her earpiece crackled before she could answer. Tessa's voice came through suddenly sharp. "Avery." Avery's eyes stayed on Dante for half a second longer. Then she touched her earpiece. "Tell me." A pause. 3 catering staff just left the West Kitchen without trays. The ballroom lights shimmered over Glass Orchid's diamonds and secrets. Avery looked past Dante toward the service corridor. Her voice went calm. "Cole West Wing. Now." Avery kept her voice calm, but Dante saw the change in her face before anyone else did. The ballroom still looked perfect. White orchids poured from crystal vases. Candlelight trembled over polished silver. The jazz trio played soft and low near the windows, their notes mixing with the gentle clink of champagne flutes and the careful laughter of donors who had no idea they were standing above a room full of criminal kings. Outside, fog pressed against the glass. Inside, every smile had a shadow. Dante stepped closer to Avery. "What happened?" Her eyes moved across the room, counting bodies' exits staff distance. 3 catering staff left the West Kitchen without trays. Dante's expression went cold. He touched the small device in his ear. "Cole." Cole's voice came back at once. "Moving." Avery scanned the ballroom. Tessa stood near the dessert station, pretending to adjust a linen display while watching the service door. 2 of Dante's men, dressed as waiters, shifted position with trays in their hands. Another moved toward the east hall, slow enough not to alarm the guests. Avery could feel the room breathing. Too many civilians, too many cameras, too much glass. She touched her earpiece again. Tessa moved the donors away from the south doors. How dessert service. Now. Tessa did not hesitate. Copy. Avery watched her best friend clap, once smile brightly and signal the waitstaff. Within seconds, a stream of small gold plates began moving through the room. Chocolate tarts. Lemon custards. Tiny pastries with edible silver leaf. Rich people followed sugar the way children followed music. The south side of the ballroom began to clear. Dante watched the shift with narrowed eyes. You are moving them without moving them. That was the point of hiring me. I remember. No, you remember the hallway. A flicker of dark amusement touched his mouth, then vanished. Avery looked toward the balcony. The upper landing was dimmer than she liked. She had complained about that lighting twice, but the electrician insisted the shadows made the space elegant. Elegance could get people killed. Her fingers tightened around the tiny radio hidden beneath her bracelet. Cole status, static. Then Cole's voice lower than usual. West corridor empty. Service door alarm disabled. No visual on the 3. Avery's stomach turned. Dante's hand closed lightly around her wrist. Not to stop her, to steady her. She did not pull away. Across the ballroom, one of the catering staff near the main doors adjusted his cuff. Avery saw it. Not a nervous gesture, a signal. Her eyes snapped to the side entrance. Another man in a white catering jacket stepped through, then a third, then a fourth. Their jackets were too stiff, their shoulders too controlled. Their eyes did not search for guests needing drinks. They searched for angles. Avery's voice dropped. Dante, I see them. The first man reached beneath his jacket. Time thinned. The music continued for one impossible second. Then Avery moved. She grabbed a full champagne tray from a passing waiter and drove it hard into the attacker's arm, just as he drew the gun. The first shot cracked into the ceiling. The chandelier above the dance floor exploded. Glass rained down like glitter turned vicious. Screams tore through the ballroom. Dante caught Avery around the waist and pulled her behind a marble column as a second shot shattered a mirror behind them. Guests dropped to the floor. Chairs overturned. Someone sobbed. The jazz trio scattered one instrument, crashing to the ground with a hollow wooden cry. Avery shoved against Dante's chest. Let me go. No. Dante, let me go. His eyes burned into hers. Stay behind me. My guests are out there. They are alive because you moved them, not all of them. Another shot split the air. A woman screamed near the bar. Avery twisted out of Dante's grip before he could lock her in place. She dropped low and crawled behind a row of overturned chairs, her sapphire gown dragging through broken glass. Avery Dante snarled. She ignored him. There was an older man on the floor near the dance space, one hand pressed to his shoulder, eyes wide with shock. Not shot, Avery realized. Cut by falling glass. Still, he was frozen directly in the open. Avery reached him and grabbed the back of his tuxedo jacket. Sir, look at me. He blinked at her. Look at me. We are going to move to the bar. Crawl when I pull. I cannot. Yes, you can. You donated $200,000 to clean a lake you never swim in. You can crawl 10 feet. His mouth opened in stunned offense. Good. Offense was better than panic. She pulled. He crawled. A bullet struck the floor behind them and threw splinters into the air. Dante fired from the column, precise and controlled. One attacker staggered backward and fell behind a table, dragging white linen down with him. Avery got the older man behind the bar where Tessa was already pulling guests into cover. Tessa's face was pale, but her hands were steady. You are bleeding, Tessa said. Avery looked at her arm. Thin red lines crossed her skin where glass had sliced her. Later. That is not a medical plan. It is an event plan. Avery grabbed the microphone from the fallen bandstand. The speakers screeched with feedback. Every head in the room jerked toward the sound. Avery's voice filled the ballroom. Everyone stay low. Move to the East Service Hall. Staff Protocol Blue, East Hall now. For 1 second, fear fought with obedience. Then the training held. The staff moved first. Dante's disguised men opened the correct path. Tessa waved guests toward the side hall, keeping her body low behind the bar. 2 waiters formed a human shield with overturned tables. A politician crawled faster than dignity allowed. Dante reached Avery again, his face carved in fury. I told you to stay behind me, and I told you the East Hall matters. This is not the time. This is exactly the time. Your men are blocking the exit. Dante looked once. She was right. 2 of his armed men had taken defensive positions near the East Hall, creating a choke point where panicked guests were starting to bunch together. Dante touched his earpiece. Clear the East Hall. Give them space. One of his men protested through static. Dante's voice turned lethal. Now! The path opened. Guests began moving. Avery exhaled once sharp and brief. Dante looked at her. In the chaos through smoke and broken glass and screams, something passed between them. Not softness. Not yet. Trust. He had listened. He had changed the room because she told him to. A new sound cracked above them. Not a gunshot. A laugh. Slow clapping came from the balcony. The ballroom seemed to freeze around it. Victor Kane stood at the upper railing in a black tuxedo, one hand resting on the carved wood, the other holding a pistol pointed casually toward the room below. Beside him stood another man with a weapon aimed at the crowd. Victor looked pleased. Not rushed, not surprised. He had not come to escape. He had come to watch. Dante Victor called. You always did throw memorable parties. Dante stepped in front of Avery. His face went still in a way that made every line of him dangerous. Victor looked down at the ruined ballroom. All this beauty, all this money, all these important people pretending they do not smell blood under the flowers. Dante raised his gun, but the angle was poor. Victor had chosen his position well. Too many civilians between them, too much risk. Victor smiled. You cannot shoot me from there, not without making a mess in front of your donors. You made the mess, Dante said. Yes, but you invited everyone to see it. Avery looked at the balcony lights. Still dim. Too dim. The gunman beside Victor had a clear view of the East Hall. If he opened fire, the evacuation would collapse. Her mind moved faster than fear. Lighting panel. Stage controller. Tessa. Avery touched her bracelet radio and lowered her voice until it was barely breath. Tessa. Tessa answered from behind the bar. Alive. Lighting board. Kill balcony 2. What? Kill balcony 2. Leave the floor lights on. Avery, I am not a lighting tech. You labeled the board yesterday. I labeled it with tiny stickers while angry. Use the angry stickers. Tessa moved. Victor kept speaking. You know your problem, Dante? You started believing your own legend. Untouchable, unshakable, too feared to bleed. His eyes found Avery behind Dante's shoulder, and then I saw her. Dante's body changed. Avery felt it before she saw it. The anger sharpened, became personal. Victor smiled wider. There it is. The first real weakness you have shown in years. Dante's voice dropped. Careful, or what? You will burn my warehouses. Threaten my men. Break another dock, you were more interesting before you started hiding behind a woman with a clipboard. Avery stepped out from behind Dante. Dante's hand shot back, catching her wrist. She looked at him. "Trust me." His grip tightened for half a second. Then he let go. Avery looked up at Victor. "You know, for a man who planned an attack during dessert service, you made a lot of basic mistakes." Victor's smile thinned. "Excuse me?" She took one step forward, keeping herself near the column. "You sent men in catering jackets, but none of them knew how to carry trays. You disabled the West alarm but forgot the service logs still show door traffic. You chose the balcony because it looked powerful, but you ignored the one thing every event planner knows." Victor's eyes narrowed. Avery smiled. Lighting controls the room. The balcony lights went black. Gunfire cracked from above, wild and blind. Dante moved instantly. Cole appeared from the west stairwell like a shadow cut loose from the wall. He struck the gunman first, driving him into the railing. The weapon fell bouncing once on the stairs before sliding out of reach. Victor fired into the dark. Dante fired once. Victor's gun flew from his hand. He cursed and turned to run, but Avery had already locked the west exit during Protocol Blue. He hit the door and found it sealed. Cole reached him before he could turn back. The fight was short, ugly, final. Cole slammed Victor against the wall and forced him to his knees. The ballroom below remained still except for the sound of people crying, radios hissing, and distant sirens swelling through the fog. Dante did not look at Victor. He looked at Avery. She stood beneath the broken chandelier, breathing hard glass in her hair blood on one arm, the microphone still in her hand. For the first time since she had met him, Dante Westbrook looked afraid. Not for himself, for her. He crossed the room with a long, controlled stride, stepping over broken glass and fallen flowers. Avery opened her mouth to say something sharp, something useful, something that would keep her from feeling everything at once. Nothing came out. Dante stopped in front of her and took her injured arm gently. His hands were steady, but his eyes were not. "You are bleeding. It is glass. You were in the open. I had work to do." His jaw tightened. "You could have died. So could everyone else. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have." Behind them, Tessa helped a woman to her feet. Cole's voice carried from the balcony as he gave orders to secure Victor. Outside, the sirens grew louder. Red and blue light began pulsing faintly through the fogged windows. Dante lifted his hand to Avery's face. He stopped before touching her, asking without words. Avery stared at him. Then she leaned into his palm. The contact broke something in him. He cupped her cheek with a tenderness that looked almost violent on a man built for command. His thumb brushed a small streak of blood near her jaw. "You stayed," he said. Avery let out a shaky breath. "I told you, I do not leave until the party is over. The party is over." She looked around at the ruined ballroom. The crushed orchids. The shattered glass. The overturned chairs. The charity banners still hanging above a floor marked by bullets and fear. Technically, she said, cleanup is going to be a nightmare. A sound escaped him, half laugh, half pain. Then he pulled her into him. Avery went willingly. For 3 weeks, everything between them had been almost a touch, almost honesty, almost a confession swallowed before it could become dangerous. Now there was no room left for almost. Dante kissed her. Not carefully, not politely. He kissed her like the room had burned down around them and she was the only thing left standing. Avery's hands gripped the front of his tuxedo, pulling him closer because she was tired of pretending distance had kept her safe. It had not. Nothing about Dante Westbrook was safe. But in his arms, with sirens outside and smoke in the air, she felt anchored. He broke the kiss first, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. "You should have taken the car. You should have hired a better electrician." His mouth curved against hers. "Even now, especially now." Cole's voice came from across the room. "Dante, Federal agents are at the front gate. Dante did not move. Avery looked toward the windows. The flashing lights were brighter now. Men outside shouted orders through the fog. "What happens to Victor? He lives," Dante said, though his tone made the word sound temporary. "For now." And the summit gone before the first siren. Avery stared at him. He gave a faint shrug. "Hidden exits were one of my father's better ideas. Of course they were." Tessa approached slowly, stepping around glass. Her eyes moved from Dante's arms around Avery to Avery's swollen mouth, then back again. "I am not judging," Tessa said. "I am processing with concern." Avery closed her eyes. "Not now. Actually, now feels important." Dante looked at Tessa. "You did well." Tessa blinked. "Thank you, terrifying, handsome criminal man." Avery groaned softly. Dante almost smiled. Then his expression shifted again as he looked down at Avery. The noise of the room faded. The agents outside. Cole's orders. Tessa's anxious breathing. All of it slipped behind the one question still living between them. Dante touched Avery's cheek again. "I gave you the door, I know. You did not take it." "No." Why, Avery looked at him for a long moment. There were easy answers, bad answers, romantic answers that would sound foolish beneath broken chandeliers. She could say she stayed because of the contract, because of Tessa, because of the guests, because she was stubborn. All true, none complete. She looked at the man in front of her. The monster people whispered about. The king in a black tuxedo. The boy who had learned fear from his father and still somehow listened when she told him how to save strangers. Because when the room fell apart, she said softly, "You were not the danger I wanted to run from." Dante went still. Avery reached up and straightened his crooked bow tie with trembling fingers. "You are insane," she whispered. His eyes darkened with something familiar. That smirk returned slowly, the one from the hallway. The one that had started with her papers on the floor and her pulse in her throat. "What did you say?" Avery should have stepped back. She should have remembered the guns, the blood, the sirens, the fact that this man could turn any room into a kingdom and any mistake into a chain. Instead, she smiled, small, reckless, alive. "I said, you are insane, baby." Dante's hand tightened at her waist. "Say it again." Avery leaned closer, her lips brushing the edge of his jaw as the front doors opened, and federal voices echoed through the estate. "Baby." His breath caught. For one brief second, the most feared man in the room looked utterly undone. Then Dante Westbrook smiled like a man who had lost control and decided for once in his life not to take it back.